For the first time in decades, boys are actually more likely to say they want to get married than girls. And if you're not new to this channel, it's very obvious why that is. For many others out there, however, who are not as tapped in, they're falling back on a typical tactic, which is to just point and blame men. So these women are making these decisions, and yet it's still the men being blamed. And it's kind of the same approach when it comes to discussing how frequently women initiate divorce. And the argument becomes, well, yeah, it's because men are so shit. Men are so awful. So, of course, it's not a surprise they're using the same tactic here and saying, like, well, yeah, of course girls don't want to get married. It's because boys suck so much. And that tactic is juvenile. It's played out. And it's intellectually lazy. But let's have a look at what's actually going on. 12th grade girls are less likely than boys to say they want to get married someday. So U.S. high schoolers are less likely now than in the past to say they want to get married someday. And a smaller share today say that they're likely to have children if they do get married, according to a Pew Research Center analysis of survey data from the University of Michigan. So as of 2023, 67% of the nation's 12th graders say they will likely choose to get married someday, down from 80% in 1993. Another 24% say they don't know if they'll get married, up from 16%. The share saying they don't plan on getting married someday is largely unchanged. So the survey also asked 12th graders how likely they are to do certain things if they do get married. A smaller share of 12th graders now than in 93 say they're very likely to stay married to the same person for life if they do tie the knot. About half, 51%, say this, compared with 59% in 1993. The share of 12th graders who say they're very likely to want to have kids in this situation has also decreased over this time span, 48% in 23 versus 64% in 93. But this is the part that I really want to get into. The drop in the share of 12th graders who say they want to get married reflects shifting views among girls. Boys are more likely than girls to say they want to get married someday, 74% versus 61%. But this was not always the case. In 1993, a larger share of girls, 83%, than boys, 76%, said they wanted to get married. The share of boys saying this is virtually unchanged over the 30-year period, but the share among girls dropped by 22 percentage points. There are no statistically significant gender gaps on the other questions. So let's see how the blame is being shifted to men on this one.
Not imagine a more humiliating indictment of Gen Z men than the fact that Gen Z women have decided that they're no longer interested in marriage. They've met enough of these Gen Z men, and they have no interest in spending the rest of their lives with one of them.
So morons like that actually think the reason the percentage of 12th grade girls who say they see themselves getting married has dropped from 83% in 1993 to 61% in 2023 is because these girls looked at Generation Z men and decided, they're so horrendous, they're so awful, they can't even imagine being married to them. And the reason that doesn't work is quite simple. The number wouldn't change that dramatically, if the issue were just the perceived quality of men. Like a shift this big, over 20 points, that's going to require a massive cultural force. You don't get that kind of movement from girls independently looking around and deciding, Gen Z men are gross. In order for that kind of number movement, you're going to need an overwhelming cultural push targeted at millions of girls. And that's exactly what we've had. What we're seeing is a complete shift in how we talk to young women, a complete shift in how they're raised. Only something that large scale and that systemic can move the needle this dramatically. And also we see that with boys, the number has only moved about 2%. So basically nothing. And that's how I know what he's proposing is false, because Gen Z women aren't great prospects either, due to their feminist tendencies. And yet, despite all of that, the boys' numbers haven't really changed. So the only way you get a drastic shift, like we've seen with the girls, is through relentless propaganda. And of course, the people saying, yeah, it's because the men are so awful. That's what has caused this huge drop, are feminists. So no surprise there. And that includes male feminists too, obviously, like the dork we just heard from. But this is also the same pattern that we see with divorce, right? Every time the topic comes up that women initiate most divorces, and it's not even close, it becomes, it's because the men are so toxic. No, it's because women are constantly told to leave if they're slightly unhappy. And any man who is not constantly bending over backwards, well, he's toxic. He's a narcissist. And then, they deserve better. It's really not complicated, but people choose to ignore it. This is why women initiate most divorces. This is why young women and girls are less interested in marriage. It's feminism. It's the sisterhood. I mean, for fuck's sake, Vogue, right, published that article. Said having a boyfriend is now considered Republican and embarrassing. And that's where we're at. Meanwhile, boys quoting Andrew Tate are considered the radical ones. Give me a break. The radicalization of girls has been happening for decades, completely unchecked, and now people are shocked. Oh, wow, the number dropped from 83% to 61%. What could have happened? What happened is obvious. We have women posting daily about how they don't want kids. They don't want marriage because they'd rather, buy stuff with their disposable income. They want to go shopping. They want to get into hyper materialism. And of course, not be a slave to a man. After all, right? All that unpaid labor and man keeping, who on earth would want to do that? I mean, the fact that we have those types of terms being created, articles being pushed out like that from Vogue and Vice and the mainstream. But where did that come from? Was it Stanford? I can't remember. These departments coming up with these new terms to shame men, and people still want to blame men for everything. It's like some defect in the public brain. We just can't stop pointing fingers at men. It's never feminism. No, it is always misogyny. It's literally a mind virus. It's like, oh no, it couldn't possibly be our precious girls and young women. No, it must be the males. Those boys, man, they must be so misogynistic and horrendous. That's why the women don't want to marry them. That's why when they do get married, they're leaving. It's all a bunch of bullshit. Let me ask you this. Do you think these women are instead of marriage, they're just choosing complete celibacy? Of course not. They're still sexually active. The only difference now is that, they don't have marriage in mind. So what does that tell you about young women today? It means they're more open to non-committal sex, but not necessarily interested in long-term commitment. And that says a lot. And even the young women who are saying they do want to get married, how many of them are waiting to have sex till marriage? Is anybody ready to talk about the fact that young women are behaving more like whores than their mothers or grandmothers? No, nobody wants to talk about that. We don't want to talk about the staggering amount of girls who sign up for OnlyFans fresh out of high school. No, we don't. Can't talk about that. The bottom line is boys are still interested in building families, right? And girls are increasingly disinterested in that. Obviously, not all of them. 61% still likely to choose to get married. But you just wait. If nothing changes, that's going to flip and become 16%. No doubt about it. And of course, we have to acknowledge that just because 12th graders, right, say they're not likely to get married, it doesn't mean they won't. That could change, right? And even the ones who say they are likely to get married, there's no guarantee they will. But what matters is the trend, right? And we can clearly see a drastic drop from 83% in 1993 to 61% in 2023. And that is not random. That is not a fluke. It's not because of the boys or the young men. This is the result of feminism, right? This is the result of indoctrination and the radicalization of young women. It's not the boys who are changing. We see this time and time again. It's not the boys who are becoming extreme en masse. It's the girls.